He spit in the face of a black schoolteacher. Now he's kneeling before her former student on the judge's bench. He called her a monkey and spit in her face for picking up litter near his truck. The crowd laughed. 10 years later, he couldn't even look up when the judge called his name because that judge was the little black boy he used to call trash, too. The first time Miss Clarice Freeman met Duke Harlan, she was collecting broken glass outside her old elementary school. It was just after sunrise, and the streets still smelled like leftover beer in the sour heat of summer. Clarice, retired after 40 years of teaching, had taken it upon herself to clean up the block every morning. It gave her a reason to walk, breathe, remember the children who once ran through those halls, some now gone, some still calling her Miss Freeman when they saw her at the store. That morning, she wore her floppy sun hat, yellow gloves, and carried a trash grabber in one hand and a faded canvas bag in the other. She didn't see Duke's lifted Dodge until it growled to a stop at the intersection, music thumping hard enough to shake her knees. Then the yelling started. "What the hell you doing out here, Aunt Jemima?" he barked from the window. "This your plantation now?" She turned slowly, calmly. "I'm just picking up trash, baby," she said, voice gentle but firm. "Yeah," he sneered. "Start with yourself." And before she could move, he leaned out the window and sped along, thick glob that hit her cheek and dripped down onto her glove. The light turned green. He drove off laughing, tires squealing. Clarice didn't wipe it off right away. She stood there, motionless, as the wind shifted. The city around her didn't blink. The early commuters passed by. No one stopped. It wasn't the first time. It probably wouldn't be the last. But it was the last time it would happen without consequences. 3 blocks away, sitting in his car, a young man in a navy suit had seen the whole thing. He didn't move at first, didn't speak, just stared, heart pounding in his ears. His name was Justice Bailey, 32 years old, Harvard Law, just appointed as a circuit judge in their home city of East Wynne, Georgia. And Miss Freeman had been his third-grade teacher. He remembered her classroom, the hand-painted signs that said you were worthy in bubble letters, the way she always brought extra snacks for kids who came to school hungry, how she hugged him the day his father was taken away in handcuffs and whispered, "You are more than what they say you are." Justice had been 9. And now he was the one with the rope, the gavel, the final word. He put the car in gear. That night, Justice didn't sleep. He sat at his kitchen table rereading the county judicial ethics code. Technically, he couldn't preside over a case where he had personal involvement. But there was no case, no arrest, no complaint, because Miss Freeman hadn't filed one. So the next morning, he found her outside the same school, bag in hand, humming an old Sam Cooke song. "Miss Freeman," he said softly. She turned. Her smile bloomed like spring. "Well now, if it isn't little Justice," she said. "Lord, you got tall." He hugged her, longer than most would. She didn't pull away. "I saw what happened yesterday," he said. She didn't flinch, just looked at him with those same calm, ocean-deep eyes that used to tame whole classrooms. "It's not the worst thing ever done to me," she said simply. "But it shouldn't be nothing," Justice replied. She looked at him for a long moment. "I didn't file anything because I didn't want my name in the paper again," she said. "Last time that happened, it was black teacher says school board ignored her. They didn't quote the part where I said I still loved teaching." Justice nodded. "Then let me do it," he said. She raised an eyebrow. "Not for vengeance," he added. "For truth. For every kid who watched that man spit on you and thought that's how power works." She was quiet. The wind picked up. A church bell rang in the distance. Then she said, "Okay, baby. If you believe it matters, then make it matter." And so he did. Within days, Justice sent a referral to the county DA. He recused himself from the eventual trial. But he didn't disappear. He wrote an op-ed in the East Wynne Gazette titled "The Weight of Spit," describing not the act itself, but what it meant. How hate doesn't always come with torches and flags sometimes, it comes in broad daylight. Aimed at someone who spent her life building children up only to be spit on when she finally had time to rest. The article went viral. The video, captured by a nearby shop's security cam, surfaced next. It showed everything. The words, the spit, Miss Freeman's stillness. The outrage exploded. TV crews came. Reporters called. The town, once proud of ignoring its ugly past, found itself on national display. Under pressure, the DA filed charges: assault, public humiliation, and disorderly conduct with racial motivation. Duke Harlan, a mechanic and amateur MMA fighter, was arrested in his own garage mid-live stream. He called it a setup, ranted about woke mobs, and promised to sue every last one of them. His lawyer, a local hotshot with Confederate cufflinks, thought he'd walk with a slap on the wrist. He didn't count on the jury or the judge, because though Justice Bailey couldn't preside, his best friend from law school, Judge Lisa Park, could and did, and she didn't care for Duke's smug smile or his thin apologies crafted by a PR firm. The trial was short. The verdict was clear. Guilty. On all counts. But the real reckoning came at sentencing. Duke stood, shifting in his too-tight suit. Across the room, Miss Freeman sat quietly, hands folded, back straight. She hadn't cried once. Judge Park read the charges. Then she read the letters from former students, community leaders, even nurses from the ER who'd treated Miss Freeman after the incident, because yes, the spit had infected her eye with a bacterial irritant. Then she looked at Duke. "Mr. Harlan," she said, "you have demonstrated not just cruelty, but cowardice. You attacked a woman who spent 40 years lifting children into the light, and you did it from the safety of your truck, like a man throwing rocks from behind a wall." Duke rolled his eyes. "Therefore," she said, "you were sentenced to 1 year in county jail, followed by 18 months of mandatory community service. Specifically, you will work under the supervision of the East Wind Public School System, cleaning classrooms, bathrooms, lunch trays, wearing a uniform with the name Miss Freeman stitched across your chest." The courtroom gasped. And then came the moment no one expected. "Before you are taken into custody," she added, "you will address the court." Duke turned toward Miss Freeman. The room was dead silent. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. And then, in front of the woman he spit on, the city he'd mocked, and the nation that had watched, he dropped to his knees. "I was wrong," he said. "Tears weren't part of the sentence. But they came anyway. I thought I was better than you. Smarter. Wider. Stronger. But I've never done a thing in my life that mattered the way your life has." He lowered his head. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I see you now." Miss Freeman didn't respond. She stood, walked slowly toward him, and placed a hand on his shoulder. Then she whispered something only he could hear. Later, when reporters asked what she said, she simply smiled. "I told him what I told Justice when he was 9, that he was more than what the world had made him." Duke Harlan didn't sleep the first week in jail. Not because of the cell, or the food, or the cold steel of the cop beneath him. It was the silence. The kind that wraps around your chest and makes you hear your own thoughts too loud. The kind that makes you remember everything you've spent your whole life trying not to think about. Like how his grandfather used to talk about putting black folks in their place. Or how his father once laughed when a black teenager got shoved into the mud behind the gas station. Or how, growing up, Duke never questioned any of it, just absorbed it like second-hand smoke, until it filled his lungs and colored his vision. But Miss Freeman hadn't flinched when he spat on her. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She looked at him like she knew. Not just who he was, but who he could have been. That's what haunted him. On the 8th day of his sentence, Duke was escorted to his first shift at East Wind Elementary. The irony hit him like a slap. The same school he used to drive by and throw soda cans toward when the kids were lining up for lunch. The same school Miss Freeman had worked at for 40 years, whose halls were filled with the echoes of her patience, her joy, her refusal to quit even when the world gave her every reason. They gave him a navy jumpsuit. Embroidered across the back in white thread were the words Miss Freeman Honors Service Program. He wanted to rip it off. Instead, he put it on. Principal Marcia Kellogg met him at the entrance. Stern, gray-haired, and absolutely unimpressed. "You're not here for redemption," she said. "You're here for responsibility." She handed him a mop and walked away. That day, he scrubbed gum off desks, cleaned graffiti off stall doors, some of which had his own name carved into them from back when he used to sneak in and cause trouble as a teen. He emptied trash, wiped cafeteria tables sticky with chocolate milk and mashed peas, and unclogged a toilet overflowing with blue paper towels. At the end of the day, he was soaked in bleach and shame. But no one laughed at him. They didn't ignore him either. They just looked at him. Some kids with confusion, some with quiet curiosity, a few with fear. And he realized for the first time that he didn't like being the monster in the room. The days passed, slowly, then faster. Week 3, he met Jordan, a 4th grader with wide eyes, 2 short pants, and a backpack heavier than he was. Jordan dropped his lunch tray every single day. No one helped him. not even the teachers. Except Duke. The first time it happened, Duke knelt down, picked up the applesauce-covered tray, and said nothing. Jordan stared at him, then whispered, "Thanks, mister." That mister hit Duke in the chest. He nodded. "You're welcome." The next day, Jordan dropped his tray again, this time on purpose, and smiled. Duke laughed, a short, surprised sound he hadn't made in weeks. It became a thing. Day after day, tray after tray, Jordan would fumble and Duke would clean up, until finally Duke taught him how to balance it right. Jordan beamed the first time he made it to the table without a spill. That afternoon, Duke sat alone in the empty cafeteria and cried for 10 minutes straight. By the end of the month, teachers stopped calling him the convict behind his back. Some began to say Duke. One even said, "Thank you." Principal Kellogg noticed. So did the board. And so did Miss Freeman. She came on the last Friday of the semester, holding a tin of lemon cookies in her hands, the kind she used to bake for her students every holiday. Duke was cleaning the front entrance, stooped over with a broom and pan. He looked up, froze. Miss Freeman smiled gently. "Lord, look at you," she said. "Sweeping up just like I used to." He stood, brushing dust off his knees. "I don't know what to say." "You already did," she said. "With every day you showed up." She handed him the tin. "Don't eat them all at once." He laughed. A little, broken sound. Then, "I'm sorry." She nodded. "I know." He looked at her, eyes glassy. "You believed in people like me, even when we didn't deserve it." "I believed in children," she said. "And every bigot I've ever met used to be one." Duke swallowed hard. "If I'd had a teacher like you." "You still might have spit," she interrupted, not unkindly. "But maybe you'd have thought twice first." They sat on the steps together, eating cookies, watching the last kids run to the buses. A quiet understanding between them. Not forgiveness. Not quite. But something close enough to carry. That summer, Duke completed his sentence. On his last day, every kid in Jordan's class made him a card. Jordan's had a drawing of the two of them, side by side, with a caption written in shaky pencil, "You are nice now." Duke framed it. The news moved on. The cameras vanished. But in East Wind, something changed. The story traveled. Not just the spit, but the transformation. Miss Freeman's name became more than a headline. It became a scholarship. The Clarice Freeman Future Teachers Fund launched that Fallon Endowment Justice Bailey helped establish in her honor, designed to help students of color become educators. Duke donated the first $1,000 from his own pocket. He didn't want his name on the website. He just wanted to help. As for Miss Freeman, she kept walking the block every morning. Same gloves, same grabber, same soft hum of gospel beneath her breath. People started walking with her. First one, then three, then a whole line of former students, neighbors, teachers, even the mayor one Saturday. Someone called it the Clarice cleanup. She called it just another Tuesday. Injustice? He kept rising. Eventually appointed to the state appellate court. But he never left East Wind for long. His chambers may have moved, but his roots stayed put. He still stopped by her house every month. Same as always. She always had sweet tea ready. He always asked if she needed anything. She always said, "Just company." And every time, when he left, she would watch him from the porch and whisper the same thing she had when he was 9 years old. "You are more than what they say you are." And now, the world had no choice but to believe it. Summer turned to fall. East Wind cooled under a sky brushed with orange and gold. The streets felt different, not quieter, not cleaner, but more aware. You could feel it at the grocery store, at the gas station, in the way people looked at one another just a second longer, like maybe they were finally starting to see. Miss Freeman still walked her route every morning. Her steps were a little slower now, but the grip of her trash grabber was as firm as ever. People greeted her by name. Some honked as they passed. A few even got out to help. She never asked. They just showed up. One October morning, she stopped outside the same corner where Duke Harlan had spit on her. The sidewalk had been repaved. The cracks were gone, but the memory wasn't. She stood there for a moment, wind lifting the edge of her sun hat, eyes soft with something deeper than sadness. Then she turned and saw a familiar face. Duke. Not in uniform, not in cuffs. In jeans, a button-up, and a canvas work apron dusted with sawdust. He held a paintbrush in one hand, a can of blue trim paint in the other. "Morning, Miss Freeman," he said. She looked at the storefront behind him. The old hardware store, shuttered for years, now freshly painted. A sign hung above the door, "Second chance fix it and repair." "You bought this?" she asked. "Leased it," he said. "Started a small repair business. Patching drywall, fixing up porches, repainting. Figured I've broken enough things in my life. Time I learned to fix something." She nodded, a smile playing at the corner of her mouth. "In business. Slow," he said, chuckling. "But honest." He gestured toward a wooden bench he'd just sanded. "You remember how I used to tag these up in the park?" "I remember," she said, voice warm. He looked at her. Really looked. "I'm sorry for all of it," he said again, quietly. "Not just the spit. The years before. The things I said. The things I believed." Miss Freeman stepped closer. She touched the edge of the bench, ran her fingers along the smooth grain. "I can't give you forgiveness," she said gently. "That's not mine to hand out like candy." "I know. But I believe in evidence." He blinked. "Evidence? I taught science, remember?" She smiled. "And I always told my students, if you want people to believe in change, show them the proof." She tapped the wood. "This is a start." That night, in his small studio above the shop, Duke stared at a photograph on the wall. It was the only one he'd kept from his youth. Not a family portrait. Not a school photo. It was a picture someone had taken during his sentencing, the moment he knelt in court, head bowed, with Miss Freeman standing over him. Someone had framed it. And below, in etched brass, was a quote. "Growth starts when shame ends and humility begins." He didn't know who said it. Maybe Miss Freeman. Maybe someone else. But he read it every day before he opened the shop. And slowly, the shame stopped rotting him. It started feeding something new. Across town, Justice Bailey was preparing for something he'd dreamed of but never imagined would actually come. The governor had called. He'd been nominated for the state Supreme Court. At 34. Youngest in Georgia's history. But when the press asked him how he got there, he didn't talk about law school, or winning tough cases, or fighting systemic injustice in chambers. He told them about a woman with lemon cookies and yellow gloves. About a classroom with paper stars on the ceiling and a sign that said you were worthy. He said, "Before I ever knew what justice meant, I met it in the form of a black schoolteacher who believed I mattered even when the world said otherwise." He paused, looked into the cameras. And her name was Miss Clarice Freeman. The clip went viral. Again. Only this time, it wasn't rage that made people share it. It was reverence. Clarice Freeman received over 5,000 letters in the following weeks. Students from states she'd never visited wrote to say they wanted to teach because of her. Black girls sent selfies in graduation caps, saying she made them believe they could lead. White teachers in small towns admitted they'd been blind and thanked her for showing them how to see. One letter came from Alabama, written in pencil, shaky but clear. It was from the mother of a boy with autism who used to scream at black neighbors out of fear. "My son saw your story," it said. He cried. Then he asked if we could bake cookies for the garbage man, because he said everyone deserves kindness. Miss Freeman sat on her porch, reading that one 3 times. Then she folded it and placed it in the wooden box where she kept her most precious things. Inside were photos of former students. Letters. One drawing from a kid named Justice, age 9. It was a stick figure with a cape and a sign that said, "I want to be good like Miss Freeman." Years later, he still was. And she still was proud. The day of Justice's swearing-in ceremony, the courtroom was filled with judges, politicians, media, and law professors. But Justice only cared about one guest. She sat in the front row, wearing a dark green suit and a brooch shaped like an open book. When he took the oath, their eyes met. She nodded, once, and that was more sacred than any gavel ever held. Afterward, the two of them sat alone in the empty courtroom. Justice loosened his tie, looking exhausted. "You ever feel like it's all too much?" he asked. "All the time," she said. "But I keep going." "Why?" "Because I'm stubborn," she smiled. "And because people are watching, even when you think they aren't." He leaned back, quiet. "Do you remember," she said, "the first time you told me what you wanted to be?" "I said I wanted to be a superhero," he chuckled. "No," she said. "You said you wanted to be someone who made the world fair." He looked at her, and something in his chest settled, as if all the years of doubt finally had a place to rest. Outside the window, the sun began to dip below the skyline, casting long shadows across the courtroom floor. And in that moment, the past and future sat together. Not as teacher and student, but as proof. Proof that the arc of justice isn't abstract. It lives in people. In classrooms. In apologies. and second chances, and a little boy who dropped his lunch tray and a man who finally picked it up, and a teacher who got spit on and chose dignity over rage, and a racist who was forced to kneel and rose up trying to be better, and a judge who remembers his roots, and in a city that finally chose to face its truth. Years later, a mural was painted on the side of East Wynn Elementary. It showed Miss Freeman standing tall, arms folded, surrounded by children of every race and size, holding books, stethoscopes, gavels, and trash grabbers. At the top, in bold letters, "You are more than what they say you are, Miss Freeman," and below, in smaller print, "Dedicated to those who teach the world to change by being brave enough to change it."